Welcome everybody to another round of contributor technical discussions from the Gnoland universe. Today we'll start with the demo by the Berty team. Here you go, guys. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. It's just a super short one, like we mentioned. Let me share my screen. With help from Alexei and many others, we're working on a PR to update Gnoweb to show doc comments. So with the new endpoint using QDoc, we can show doc comments and we can show the function signature, and we can do some other fun stuff. So this is, I just want to flash this in front of you. This is what we're working on and what's coming. There's also the idea to make this look more like the like the Go dev pages, just in look and feel. I don't know if people know what those look like. I don't have a link right now, but that's it. So just wanted to give a ping here. That's it. We also, I don't know if I can get really lucky and package docs also. Anyways, so this is what we can do with the new query endpoint. That's
nice.
it.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
All right, next up for the demo is Nemanja with Gnoland visualized.
And just a second. So exactly a month ago, I showed you my project I'm working on. Since then, I want to update you on the new features. I added a contribution selection. So let's take Manfred, for example. Here you can see all the packages he has worked on. And if you click Let's Test Utils, here you can see how much of the package was his contributions and how many lines of code is that. And the next big thing I added is a new page that gets you all the packages for a specific query. For example, if you want to check all the packages that don't use any other imports or don't import anything, so they're standalone, you can see them all here. So all of these packages are not used anywhere. You can see the details of them, for example, what the package is, or you can even download that data in a CSV. So you can do analysis of it. And yeah, that's basically it.
Nice, good work. I love the improvements.
Thank you.
And I'm actually checking this out. So Norman is actually leading the contributor. So this is for which time frame? Like the last, is it total or some last year or something?
For the contributions?
Yes.
Total.
Nice. So Noise is leading even more contributions than Manfred.
Yeah, but it's only the examples folder. It doesn't take into account anything outside.
Still pretty cool contribution. So thanks, Nemanja. All right, that was the demo section. Let's move over to the discussions. Berty had a couple of questions.
Yeah, quick questions which came out of our work on the developers realm. I can share my screen and just jump to where we are here. So general question. So we were working on package level variables, and like in Go, if you have a package level variable which calls a function which actually computes something, or maybe calls a different function, then when you load the program, this thing is executed. But it seems like in Gno, a package level variable maybe is computed once when the package is installed. And so the question is, package level variables, are they computed once in history, or are they computed each time the system is invoked, like it is in Go?
It's like if they were in the init function. So when you load the contract, the uploader is like the caller, and init and top-level variables are assigned.
Are these allowed to call functions from other realms?
So this is something we're currently working on and maybe changing. I think Morgan, Maxwell, and Jay are considering changes here. But if you call a package, there is no problem. If you call a realm, maybe there will be new limitations soon. Is Morgan here? Yeah, he's here.
Hey, I'm on from my phone, so I can't read very well. So what's the question again? Sorry.
So a package level variable, like for example, where in developers it calls a complex function. It calls a regex compile, for example, which in this case is a a read-only const function. But what if it called a function from another realm, like get total message count or something like that? It's kind of counterintuitive whether these things load, like in Go. If you have a file and you fire it up and you do go run, it will run the function, even if it's assigning a package level var, and it'll run it when you execute. But maybe in Gno, it just executes once, in which case it's kind of counterintuitive. What would behavior be if it calls another realm?
It works back to how we treat init functions. So like init functions under the hood are treated like at the same time that initialization variables are treated. Actually, like initializing variables is done just a second before we just before we do the init functions. So this is done essentially only when you add the package or add the realm, right? So it's only done once ever when creating it.
So do these prohibit calling things which could be dynamic information?
No, simply like if you call like another realm, like you say get user count, say it will simply get the user count when the like the realm calling it is published.
Okay. Well, not a problem, but it's another thing which is somewhat counterintuitive to native Go developers. I don't know where to document that.
Yeah, I guess it's I don't know. Like there's a lot we'll need to improve on the documentation of more specific stuff about how the VM works. Even for just the end user. But just in general, initialization happens once. That's both for global variables and unit functions, and it's done when you do the add a package transaction. and that's basically it, right?
Okay, so yeah, just a thought. So now that we understand, we understand they're only executed once. And I guess while I'm here, our second question, really short, was while we're working on developers, we created a bunch of tests. There's various flavors of tests. There's something test.gno. There's something file test, which kind of looks at output, but then there's txtar, which also looks at outputs. And we happily created all these tests, but we kind of repeated tests, and it's not clear what belongs where, or if there's guidance on this. We looked in the kind of GNO getting started stuff, and so is there a wisdom on which things belong in each of these types of tests, and how to help developers when they're working on realms?
If you're working on a realm, or are you working on core team or on core monorepo development?
I don't know, something like developers, a realm which does some service.
Okay, so in general, I would advise to try to use normal Go/GNO tests as much as possible. So the first kind.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're they're well integrated into the language. They are we still need to improve them, like to be able to give them more isolation, but we are also looking to make PRs to make them work better for even capturing events and such. But yeah, TLDR, the tests should be used basically most of the time, and in some cases you may want to use file tests. I think there is using file tests outside of the monorepo. I think it's mostly good at, just if you're trying to do something with the normal tests, and it's just very hard to do, or becomes tricky, or you're doing something which isn't supported yet, like verifying what events are emitted by a round. That's something we don't support in tests, but we support in file tests currently. So those are the discriminant between the two. Eventually, I think we don't want file tests to be a long-term testing solution for people outside of the monorepo. I think it will forever be a useful tool inside of the monorepo, just because it helps us test the language without having to rely on the testing package existing. But outside of it, I think we want to switch over possibly to just having more testable examples as a way to demonstrate how a realm can work. So that's similar to what Go has, so that you can have on documentation examples of how you can do a make text run on a package, or just call it, which is using the same system as Go has. I guess that's also one use that file tests have, which isn't supported otherwise. But yeah, hopefully that gives an idea. Txtar tests should they're only supported in the monorepo, and really they should exist for system packages, or for testing GnoVM level, or Gno common level, or the Gnoland node level stuff.
Is there typically repetition of tests between these three types, or is there each one tests a particular thing that the other ones can't test?
I would say that TXR tests aren't much of a duplication of the others generally. So they're kind of a beast of their own. Some things are TXR tests, which could just be file tests, but that's another story. I'd say that generally, I didn't find much repetition in the examples I looked at, with the same thing happening both in tests and file tests, for instance. When there is, it might be just because, especially historical error as the testing system was introduced most later on. I think the boards realm has a lot of file tests, for instance.
Yeah, maybe our mistake is that's what we were looking at as a paradigm of what is expected. Okay, not a big deal, but again, maybe this is an opportunity for documentation clarification.
Jeff, I think Emmanuel has a question.
Oh yeah, I should have looked in.
Emmanuel?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add more to what Morgan was saying. So one nice thing about TXR tests is that, there are some situations where you might wire up code. For example, I just added, gas consumption for a specific component, but I want to test it out with something else. And maybe I want to start up the whole, Gnoland itself. And that might be very hard to express in code, or might involve way too many imports, that type of thing. So in that case, TXR test really, really works out well. And for example, if we took a look at, let me send you a link to this file. It would be the TXR. Okay. So if you share this on your, if you share this on your screen. So yeah, see how very comprehensive and all-in-one that is. Gnoland start line 7, we make a TX, then we expect we look at output that we expect. That's when as Morgan described, if we're doing GnoVM level things, but it's also you want to tie them in directly into something else like make TX, add package, and all that. It's much easier to write these kinds of tests. And if you look at line 29, in there we can actually include files. So you see how trivial that becomes. If we were to do this in code, that would be like a 300-line file. Does that give much better context to when to use it, TX?
I see. So in our case, we were writing a realm that was going to be part of the monorepo and adding it. I could see how TXR would help test the interface by calling realm functions from the outside through the GnoVM, just making sure that works. In our case, though, maybe this was a mistake, but we kind of tested a bunch of shit in here. Tested basic functionality. Maybe this is not what TXR is meant for, because we're already testing a bunch of these things in the star.test things, right? Or we test them here, and even in file test we tested some basic functionality. So again, I'm sure there's some functionality that's useful through each of these methods, but it just wasn't clear to us. And maybe it's a documentation improvement opportunity.
Yeah, just one last thing. So if you scroll down, you see on line 29 how we have output. That comes from Go natively. And where that came from was we used to write a ton of examples, but as we're changing Go a lot, examples would break. Okay, but many of the time there was stuff like you didn't necessarily want to test out. So one nice thing about these file tests is that they will keep your documentation basically up to date. So you see all the work you're doing on Gnoweb, and then you can actually include files. Does that give much better context to when to use it, TX?
I see. So in our case, we were writing a realm that was going to be part of the monorepo and adding it.
later on, as people are exploring realms, maybe there's some trivial outputs that are expected from something. When that code breaks, your file tests are gonna fail. So, the precedent is, back in the day, we're writing lots of code, but there would be examples which people would copy and paste, and you just wanted them to always fail loudly if things tripped out. I hope that gives more context to where file test comes from.
Okay.
Manfred?
And what you can expect is one to have so what you have right now in file test to become the testable examples. So in underscore test.gno file, you can have func example, and we can expect something similar. Ideally, working the same way with auto-generated comments. So what you had here will work in normal tests, and you can have a single example or several ones depending on what you want to do. So we can expect file tests to become deprecated over time. And about take stars, I think we will keep them for integration tests and just making sure that we can test things more about the chain more than just a single contract. But you can also expect maybe to have more testing helpers over time. Maybe one of the helpers will allow you to list the events, another one to list the STDRs, and another one STD out. And maybe most of the current TXStar file will be able to be rewritten in full underscore test.gno files. But I think that we'll always keep some TXStars just because they are the only ones testing a real chain, because we'll run a real chain. It's really readable, but yeah, if you want an integration test, and I do want integration tests, because you can have, I don't know, 1 million unit tests working and the integration is not working. Right. Integration tests are useful, but you should not expect them to be used outside of the monorepo. So what you can expect is that today use underscore test and file test most of the time. Maybe they start in extreme conditions, and over time you should be able to only use underscore test.gno files. Only the first one. This is what we expect for users.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. That's it. We should give some time to some others here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ian. Next up is Julian with his topic around integration, GnoVM and other chains.
Yeah, I think it will be a short one, but basically I was investigating how to integrate the GnoVM in basically in the Cosmos SDK chain, and I was curious about like some ideas that and some modularity if it was wanted to be added, let's say, in the GnoVM. Let me maybe share my screen to explain that. So basically, can you see? Yeah, you can see it. So basically, there's like, I was quite surprised actually. I was onboarding into the code and reading about the GnoVM. It was like quite nice, and I was not too lost coming from the SDK. And there were like a few things that I was curious about. What was the preferred way of like the future for basically putting the GnoVM on another chain? I know it's not the priority right now. But that does seem something interesting to consider. So like I started by simply like crafting a normal Cosmos SDK module, and I was going about basically integrating the GnoVM keeper, which interacts eventually with the machine, and going about basically having a wrapper for everything as there is a type that I expected from element 2 and from Gnoland that differs a bit from the SDK, but it's pretty much mappable in an okay way. But I was mostly wondering, as I was encountering some hardcode value specific to Gnoland, in the VM keeper, basically, if it's something that you will consider to actually modelize. Like I see here, there's like a VM domain that exists as an option. The VM keeper just to be a bit Gnoland agnostic, or is it better when we try to integrate in a Cosmos SDK module to mainly, instead of basing yourself in the keeper and using the handlers directly from the keeper, like the calls and etc., to just instead like possibly duplicate it and just use the machine directly.
So right now, if you look at the monorepo, there are 3 main top-level folders. GnoVM is a module that we expect to be modular by default. TM2 to be, as you imagine, also very generic and modular. But Gnoland is both the app chain and all the modules we don't expect to make generic right now. As you said, it's not a priority, meaning that you can expect that the day we split the monorepo, or the day we reorganize the monorepo, or the day we just work on making the VM keeper reusable in some ways, we will eventually duplicate or maybe try to extract some generic parts. But the Gnoland top-level package was never expected to be something you import directly. This is a custom Gnoland only chain where we take the shortcut to put more things that we know that will be generic later. But it's premature optimization to expect being able to identify what will be generic, what won't be. So we put a lot of custom things right here, and maybe there will be a generic VM keeper later in GnoVM folder. Maybe not, maybe another top-level folder which will be about bridging or gluing everything together. So get some inspiration if you want. You can make experiments at your own risk using the Gnoland folder, but expect it to break. Expect it to not be something intended to become generic. It's mostly an experimentation area where we do what we need, and later, when the day will come, we will help people, or we will by ourselves try to extract the generic part. So feel free to experiment, but yeah, this is the reason why so many things will be very different here. It's on purpose.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. The thing that might be difficult, maybe not, there's been a lot of changes to the params keeper. I don't know. The last time I looked at the SDK, they removed the params keeper. Is that it?
Right. Yeah. It's not removed, but it's not being used in most of module. Yeah.
What are they using instead?
The params are directly stored within the module themselves.
Okay. What is making you want to integrate? Like, where is this coming from? I'm curious. Just from the.
Yeah, this is actually was thinking of how like align maybe better Ignite or CLI with Gnoland, and that was like one idea that was interesting into pursuing. Eventually, I was thinking like this is like first getting the GnoVM maybe working on the SDK chain, and then with alignment with Gnoland, we'll be probably resolving the Gnoland packages and realm directly from the node chain, like in the future. But this is experimenting with the GnoVM on the Cosmos SDK chain is like pretty cool.
Yeah. Can you show that file that you first showed? There's like a diff on like, I guess, the VM keeper.
Yeah, let me just get my screen back. You mean from the one from Gnoland or the one from here?
From here, it was a diff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is basically a very simple approach of just embedding the VM keeper and then just instantiating everything is required for the VM keeper and having most of the time wrappers. As you mentioned, param is a bit of a pain right now, as I will need to just like make it work with like how with already one key in the SDK. Check where is it?
Can you show me this right here? I'm just confused. I was looking at it and I was wondering, why is it that the left side doesn't have auth keeper or bank keeper? What is the left side?
Oh, the left side is basically a default Ignite scaffolded chain, which is a basic chain with nothing on it. And then
okay, got it. Thank you. I think you could just import the param keeper as a separate standalone keeper. Maybe the params keeper that we have arguably should go into the SDK. I think it's easier. It's better. But wherever it is, you could just integrate it. So even though it's not used anywhere else, it could still be used here. So just a thought.
No, that makes sense. I haven't
yeah.
considered it. It's a good one.
Yeah. And I don't know how amenable the SDK team would be, but maybe we can propose to replace their params keeper with this one. Maybe they'll say no because no one's using it, but if we're using it, maybe they'll consider it. Anyways, thank you.
All right, that concludes our planned part of the agenda. Does anybody have any topics they want to nominate now? Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, we can't hear you, Jeff.
I have to click this other button. Curious if there's any news on test 6. Where are we?
Yeah, so we're waiting for the GovDAO PR to get merged. It went through a few rounds of reviews, so I think it should be close to ready. Once we have that, we're gonna try and launch test 6 as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or topics? All right, I guess we wrap up a bit early this week. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see each other in 2 weeks.